Hello and welcome to Bilgecast Horseman episode 2. I'm Ollie Johnson here with Hirosknight, Gran, and Sam Congrave. How you doing?
Hello.
Why do you announce him with his? Why do you announce him with his channel and you don't announce me with mine?
I thought you were going to be annoyed that you announced me first.
Put out some content and maybe I will.
The sass is strong with this one.
I update just as much as VG Cats.
Fair enough.
Is that still a thing?
So I've been sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
how are you doing, guys?
I have to ask. I'm doing fine. I mean, I've had a bit of sickness for a while, but I've gotten better. So I don't think I've caught Umbrella's latest
C virus
concoction. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the word virus is allowed on YouTube. I don't know.
I keep hearing people claiming that they'll get demonetized if they say it or mention it.
Yeah, well, if they say the specific virus. But, which is why we say C virus. Not that I'm monetized anyway, but
look,
it could also result in the video being buried, so... Yeah.
Look, I'm not going to say, again, it's a Resident Evil reference, and I know that the C virus already exists as a virus in Resident Evil 6 that was, concocted in mostly China.
Yeah.
Well, the virus was which I'm not saying Resident Evil 6 was trying to warn us, but...
The argument can be made.
There we go.
We'll just call it the Great Kerfuffle.
Yeah, the similarities can be made, and I'll just say it's one of the biggest conveniences I'm surprised no one's made the comments to. Maybe if 6 wasn't a smouldering pile of shit. But I think the big question that people are going to be asking, obviously with its name title, is, what are you doing here? What are you doing? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Sorry, that's a bit from season 2 where he can't say it and then just can get it right when he's not trying.
I think if people are watching, they'll get the shot.
If we go episode by episode,
I know,
we'll be here all night. So why don't we just start with our feelings on season 2 as a whole?
Well, we mentioned in the last season that season 1 felt like it was a bit too sitcom-y and was trying to find its feet. I think we can all agree on that one. But I think season 2 is the real start. It's kind of like season 1 feels more like, after you've gone through all the other seasons, season 1 feels more like a prologue. And season 2, in a way, feels like this is where it's really all starting.
Good way of looking at it.
It's maybe because I've played a lot of things where lately, or watched a lot of things where it feels like there's this hour-long prologue of the game I'm playing or something, or the game goes on for hours, and that turns out that's just the tutorial and prologue. So I'm kind of in that mindset, but it does feel like season 1 exists mainly to establish the world itself, and then season 2 feels, okay, this is where the real BoJack Horseman starts. One's feels more like after you've gone through all the other seasons. Season 1 feels more like a prologue. Yeah, and season 2, in a way, feels like this is where it's really all starts.
Obviously, this one had the podcast in a YouTube tab without muting it, so we got a bit of feedback there. That's on me. That's my bad. Sorry. Okay, continue.
I will say that this one introduces a few of my favourite characters as well.
Who would they be?
Hold on. I'm on season 2. It's his owl girlfriend.
Wanda.
Yeah, I forgot her name for a second, and I'm like, how can I forget her? She's like the best girlfriend he's had, mainly because again she's trying to, she's actually supported to BoJack, and it's also the fact that she doesn't know who he is. That's one of the overall things BoJack likes about her, is that she's been in a coma for so goddamn long.
What first attracts him to her is that he's getting a lot of superficial success and one-night stands with people because he's famous again, like famous.
Yeah,
but even before that, most of the time anyone saw him, it was, "Hey, ain't you the horse from Horsing Around?"
Oh,
that was the way everyone saw him, and this was the first person who didn't know who he was. Although I do
Wanda had been
like
in a
the Twin
coma
Towers
for
joke
like
that they
30
made.
years, so she had no idea.
Yeah. So that, which made it funnier because all of her ideas she was pitching felt new and fresh to everybody because they hadn't been done in 20 years. Though I did like how they did the David Copperfield joke where she goes, "Oh, we're going to have David Copperfield make the Twin Towers disappear." This is a post-part 9/11 show thing, and considering that how season 1 dealt with 9/11 as a joke, you're worried it's going to go somewhere, and then they're just like, don't know how to tell you this, but David Copperfield isn't that popular anymore. That's what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
misdirection.
Brilliant.
It leads you to believe she hasn't actually been briefed on anything that's changed.
Gotta like the bait and switch.
Also start to see cracks in Mr. Peanut Butter's relationship.
Yeah.
With the whole, he's dead! He's dead! Why don't you just listen to me? He's dead! And all she did was ask a question that someone was dead.
Yeah. And, well...
And Peanut Butter...
It was that Mr. Peanut Butter wouldn't take Diane's word for it. Was the...
Yeah, there's also the whole... The big point of this season, of course, is the Secretariat movie.
I thought that was handled quite well.
I thought it was handled well, and I did like the whole... How he did. I didn't like that they replaced the director.
Yeah.
Although that did.
I liked Kelsey.
That did It did also motivate one of the worst one of the worst things that the events that would lead to one of the worst relationship breakups that BoJack's ever had.
Yeah.
But
it was probably the most consequential season, if that makes sense.
Diane also does her whole thing where she does the thing she thinks she wants to do, but of course. The guy should. God, what's the name of that snow leopard? That snow leopard guy.
What? Sebastian St. Clair. That was it.
St. Clair, that's it. Yes.
St. Clair, the snow leopard guy, who basically is very, very he's doing nice things, but he's only doing it to make.
What it reminded me of is, have you ever seen the Armstrong and Miller show? It was sort of like seen as a parallel to Mitchell and Webb back when.
I remember that.
There was a guy in it saying, "My name is," I can't remember the name. "I live in Africa, saving lives. Do you?" And that was the intro. Yes. And that's what it reminded me of.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people had the same idea I had, that Diane obviously felt like she was doing a big thing when she went over there, but she was seeing what Sebastian was actually doing. That he didn't actually care about the people, it was more about himself. And then she wanted to write a hit piece on him and everything. But again, the harsh reality you can't take away from it is, yes, he's being a superficial bastard, but he is actually in a war zone.
Yeah, I like that it's a bit ambiguous about...
Even if he's doing it for a selfish reason, he's doing something that she can only dream of actually doing herself and can't actually do. I mean, yes, she'd have much more, pure motives, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, like he was getting something out of it, but he was helping people.
He was doing something because he was still building hospitals and still doing things, giving water to people, even if it was just to make him look good. He was still doing something good. So she came back, and and she doesn't go back to Mr. Peanut Butter, which causes the whole. Well, she ends up being a bad influence on BoJack.
Yeah, and I like how that sort of sums up their relationship.
Well, it ties into BoJack's. BoJack's in a bad place anyway because he's just tried to do the Nixon scene, which again has gotten the director he actually likes fired.
Yeah.
And the guy who's taken over is shit at his job. And it's just all about the whole we'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post. And BoJack.
So we're not making Casablanca. That's one of my favourite jokes.
That whole thing of. Yeah, because it's a different movie.
Yeah, and BoJack takes that to mean so we're making kind of something. So we're not making something that's that good. Is how BoJack takes it.
Yeah, yeah, like he thinks that it's sort of like a joke sort of comment, but it's not.
No, he's literally taking it literally that we're not making Casablanca.
Because that's a movie that's already been made.
Seb, we're not doing a wrestling podcast.
Yeah.
It's not saying that the wrestling podcast is actually like a high standard or anything. It's literally telling you This is a completely. That's
It's
the
not
logic.
banana cream pie.
Because it's a different dessert.
But then when he says this,
Exactly.
when he says this, to obviously the director, and he takes it badly, he decides to make BoJack's life miserable, so that he can't actually do the work he wants to do. This pisses him off, so he stops going to work and spending more time with Diane, who is, being Diane.
Yeah. Well,
Wanda is
Diane has abandoned her endeavour to go to Cordovia and do some good because she can't handle it. It's too emotionally taxing for her. And...
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Wanda is having to put up with these things, and BoJack is either getting made to look like a twat by Mr. Peanut Butter's new TV show.
I like
having
that.
having his thing completely ruined. Yeah, having the movie he's always wanted to do be completely ruined and have scenes that don't matter thrown into it.
Yeah.
However, let's face it, the whole Hollywood stars and celebrities, do they know things? Let's find out. Show is, brilliant within itself.
That episode was my favourite episode for a long time.
It was a very good episode.
And let's not forget the Herb's. Herb actually, does die in this season. We don't see it, but he dies in the most hilarious way possible by tweeting about it.
Oh no, there were peanuts inside.
Yeah, it's the fact that he's taking the time to. I mean, my wife does have a peanut allergy, and if she was on Twitter driving, going, "Yay, I don't have asthma anymore," then writes, "Oh no, I've crashed the car. I'm falling into a truck. Hope it's not full of peanuts." Then tweets right afterwards, "Oh no, it was full of peanuts. Hashtag die." That. It's that, but then you also get to see one of the few scenes where you see what the actual former horsing around cast looks like now, including a very, very, very British one, which we never get.
I like how she wasn't British before.
And also Sarah Lynn being Sarah Lynn.
Yeah.
Sarah Lynn's always.
Agalistic XBL, bitch.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to Sarah Lynn in more detail in the next episode.
Oh, will we?
But you get to see bits of Herb, like him telling them that the cast is a family, or that he, talking to the others about how he felt after the show, that he was mad about it, and then telling Sarah Lynn something important. But, and then him trying to figure out who Ethan's mom was, because he wants to know who he banged.
He can't remember. That's
And of
very
course,
BoJack.
Also, don't forget that Wanda found that KGB agent. Slap my salami. Army.
Yeah.
Because I'm always Russian.
Yeah, and then everyone likes him anyway, even though he's willing to destroy America. And BoJack is literally saying, this guy literally still thinks that the Soviet Union is a thing. He is hell on destroying our lives and us. Stop giving him praise, kind of thing.
I like how whenever BoJack sees a problem with someone, everyone else just ignores it.
Oh my god, it's the thing.
What?
That is one of the best jokes I love from Todd this season. That he built his own Disneyland because BoJack told him Disneyland never actually existed.
Oh yeah.
She built his own Disneyland.
He goes to court with Disneyland.
But then, of course, Mr. Peanut Butter is being Mr. Peanut Butter, and he wants to be involved in literally everything that Todd's doing, and Todd wants
to
be
Mr. Peanut Butter all over everything.
Yeah, he wants to smear his Mr. Peanut Butter all over everything. So then he takes it to. So then they end up having to go to court, and then Todd makes a very random. In the real world, this stuff wouldn't work, and that'll play into like the later seasons.
Yeah.
And just what they accidentally, read the wrong trademark, the wrong name.
Disneyland.
Okay, let me just open this legal document and see if Walt Disney accidentally misspelled his. Oh. Wow. And then they spelt it with 2 I's. And then they have to tell Todd that he's won, so he legally owns Disneyland.
BoJack just keeps ignoring him, trying to tell him about it. We get it, Todd. You're making your own Disneyland.
Yeah. And it's retconned into season 1 that he probably mentioned it at some point. It burns down. It fixes the Mr. Peanut Butter relationship, and Wanda and BoJack get their relationship a bit further on track.
It was the first sort of full season, if that makes sense, that felt like BoJack as we know it.
Yeah.
Also, we got to see things that involve BoJack, like the whole thing with the chicken.
Yeah.
This was the part of the season where the character, when I mentioned last time about the characters being allowed to, be themselves, and so that they didn't solely rely on BoJack.
Yeah.
Basically, this kind of stuff.
I also think that this is the season where we see just how unhappy BoJack is with the celebrity life.
Yeah, because it's not really addressed so much in the first season.
Well, right after the Wanda breakup, which again, I got really upset for Wanda. Although I did find the whole explanation of what happened to her.
I think the sad part about it that makes it so tragic is that if he went to her at the end of that episode, he probably would have been able to patch things up.
Because she's with her sister and she's looking really sad. Then the doorbell rings, and she's really looking hopeful that it's BoJack, and
it's just the guy with pizza.
And then eventually she got poached by another network.
I like that.
Oh.
Yeah, the whole thing. She was fired. Right to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's her own thing, which then leads into Escape from LA, which is totally one of my favorite Kurt Russell movies.
I've never seen that.
Which leads into a really weird one where, that whole thing where BoJack goes to visit Charlotte, who we've only seen bits of. Who she did appear at the funeral, but very, very briefly.
That's right, yeah.
And she told him, he should come down if he's ever in town. But he goes down to visit her, but then has to do all that bullshit about finding a boat.
Oh, yeah. Off to sea.
Then he starts to be happy.
Yeah.
He's really happy with the family and stuff. To the point where he takes a daughter out to prom.
Oh,
everything seems to be going.
Tragic.
He gives them alcohol and everything. He gives them a bit more alcohol than they had. That's a thing that annoys me in the later season, is that when that guy is recounting things to Hollyhock, spoilers, he's very selective with what actually happened. He treats it as if BoJack forced them all to drink, when in actuality they were already drinking.
Oh yeah, but that's obviously the way he remembered it,
Yeah, well, that thing, they were already drinking, and the girl he gave alcohol to, who got alcohol poisoning, was already drinking before BoJack even gave.
What he did was still irresponsible, but
it was irresponsible.
They would have been doing that anyway.
Yes, BoJack was bad for what he did, but which again was that he basically left them at a hospital.
At a hospital.
He did turn down the daughter's advances initially, which was the right thing to do. Then
initially, exactly.
Then he sat down with Charlotte to talk about things, and then we got to see see the whole BoJack wants happiness, but he doesn't really think about how what he wants affects other people.
Well, exactly, and that's the first time we really begin to see that.
Well, in that speech, he's willing to he doesn't care what happens to Charlotte's family or anything. He just wants her to run away with him, not thinking or caring about how she has responsibilities. In fact, she is probably the most happy character she's probably the most happy character in all of BoJack, because she's got a happy life she's satisfied with.
And also Kyle and the kids.
Yeah,
Kyle's her dad, and Charlotte's married to him.
I think that Kyle's one of the most underrated characters on this show, especially in the later seasons. Whenever he appears, it's just hilarious.
But it's Kyle, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's a very specific intro song. But the thing is, he's down in New Mexico for a fuck long time. He doesn't even care about the money that they're going to sue him for.
Yeah.
He's just actually happy, but then of course she rejects his advances and everything, which is the right thing to do, because again, he's thinking about how he's not thinking about how this would affect her life and the people she cares about. Then she catches them in the act of almost doing something. Again, nothing actually happened.
At that point, it's clear that something was going to happen.
He burnt his bridge. It was bad enough when he ruined it with Herb, but I feel that he ruined it even more with Charlotte here.
And then he accused Henry Winkler of murder. I like that episode.
I did, and I like that they sort of led us to think he was jealous of the book, but it turned out that the book was just awful.
Yeah. I did steal Herb's
Oh, and then
manuscript so that I could destroy it.
Carolyn lying. Don't forget Princess Carolyn lying about her relationship with Herb, so she got his urn.
Yeah.
I like how she did it to get out of being accused of schmoozing,
Yeah.
and then Mr. Peanut Butter just admits it later, and nothing comes of it.
Yeah.
And Mr. Peanut Butter pushing her to tell
I'm
what.
just here to schmooze.
All she had to do was say she didn't really have any more stories she could tell,
Yeah.
but she just continues making up more stories
And
to make it seem like she's better than anyone else.
and then in this season, well, yes, that is true, Nicole. in
Very true.
in this season, we sort of see that BoJack does, on some level, understand
Get
that
it.
he, the things that he does are wrong, but for whatever reason, it's not enough to stop him from doing them.
Yeah. Fun. So also, I think we also forgot to mention about the thing Todd's doing as well. See, apart from rescuing chickens and being caught in, everything else, plotting to do the Nixon scene, the chicken, building his own Disneyland with approval, I want to point out, approval from Vincent Adultman.
Yeah.
Because business-wise, this seems
kidnapped by a cult.
Can we talk about Vincent Adultman in this
Oh, yeah,
season?
go ahead.
I like that whole episode where, he's apparently got a temper and Todd has to hide from him. And, that's great.
Yeah, that whole.
Yeah, that's the one where Princess Carolyn sees the top kid, without the trench coat, and
yeah, and then he makes it that it's the son
from an ex-wife, and it's like,
yeah.
and oh, and it's just.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've done.
I understand why we don't see more of Vincent
let's not forget
in
that Todd
later
gets kidnapped
seasons.
by the cult.
Yeah,
That's right.
Todd joins an improv cult, and the
Sorry.
sorry. Hello.
You were saying something.
Hello. Yeah, Todd.
Can anyone
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Carry on.
Todd joins
Ollie.
an improv cult, and then BoJack has to rescue him
with a lion that's obsessed with butt puns.
Yeah.
But it turns out he can't even improvise.
Yeah, he's got a joke book.
I like how BoJack just rescues him by using improv to kill these people, but acting as if these people are idiots.
Yeah. If you die in an improv, you die
I like
in
how
real
he's the
life.
only one who's aware how stupid the world is.
Let's not forget the leader of this is a lion who likes butt jokes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd make an ass-based quip, but as you can see, I don't have my book.
I like how pissed off he sounds when he says it.
Yeah. And they clearly they lead into a joke about Scientology and it being a cult, but then they just switch it out with improv comedy.
I love it when BoJack does things like that.
So, Seb, if we with your improv group, would we have ended up on a ship where you'd ruin our lives?
The giggle ship.
Probably. Yeah, the giggle ship.
Yeah.
That's what it would be called.
And I really like that the emotional climax of the series at the end, the climax, if you will, is...
How many times are you going to say climax, Ollie?
That was the first time I said it. Did it repeat on the call?
Yeah. Yeah, all I heard was climax.
Oh god, my internet must be bad. Sorry about that, but it will be hilarious for the podcast.
It's alright. I thought you were trying to be funny.
But
I just heard climax.
But, the emotional through line of the last couple of episodes is that BoJack actually does care about Todd, and even though that doesn't excuse some of the stuff that it doesn't translate well, and it doesn't excuse some of the stuff that he's done to Todd. It's
no. It's context, isn't it?
And he does actually care about Todd and want him in his life, and he goes he makes that grand gesture to save him, and
I like how later on he talks about grand gestures and how he expects one.
Yeah, and you kid yourself into thinking that it will be enough, but you've got to be consistent, and this is just like an early sort of precursor to that.
Didn't he even reference that in that episode? Like saving your friend from a boat or something like that?
He might have done.
I think he did.
I've seen that episode so many times. I'll watch it again because it's my favourite episode. And
it's such a good
Free
one.
Churro, that is. That's a season 5 episode, I believe.
Love Free Churro. Yeah, that's right. Season 5 was probably the darkest season, and it had some of the best episodes. Yeah. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about season 2, which was also a good series.
BoJack starts this season off trying to keep a positive attitude, but in the end of the first episode, he gets that call from his mother that bums him out.
And that's the first episode where we really get what his mom's about, and what his relationship with her is, because before it's sort of done, for jokes, really. Like you have his dad saying things and his mom saying things, but it's really done more for laughs. And then you realise, oh god, this is actually quite fucked up.
Yeah. BoJack's relationship with his parents isn't explored a lot all at once. I mean, except in season 4.
Yeah, I mean, we know what we need to know in those earlier seasons, and no more, really.
It's sort of... We get the context for BoJack's mental state, his attitude, and why he's such a downer a lot of the time. And it helps him act better, which is unfortunate. And that is an opinion that people have. I've heard people say to artists that if they take antidepressants or what have you, their art won't be as good.
Well, yeah, and I like how that's sort of addressed in season 6 with Diane's story.
Yeah.
She's convinced by going on antidepressants, her writing won't be as good anymore.
Yeah, and people do have that opinion, and it's really,
harmful, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, he is acting, and I think the whole struggle really comes to a head in the Hollywood Stars and Celebrities. What do they know? Do they know things? Let's find out episode. With Daniel Radcliffe.
I like that's the first episode where he actually opens up to somebody, and that person's, Mr. Peanut Butter. Well, I suppose he's opened up to Diane.
Yeah.
But, after a real amount of struggling and after her sort of pushing him.
He never does it in so many words before, though. It's like... And that episode drives home the fact BoJack has everything that he could possibly want. Like,
that he thinks that he wants, anyway.
He has a girlfriend that he loves and that loves him. He's acting in his dream role, and he's, like, a wealthy celebrity. It's like... And even Mr. Peanut Butter's like, what more could you possibly want?
Well, he is the perfect person to be asking that as well.
Yeah.
He's very much, in those earlier seasons, a surface-level person. What you see is what you get, and, is very open about his emotions.
Yeah. And, the whole paradox of BoJack is that in spite of it all, even having everything he wants, he's still not happy because he hates himself. And
yeah, that's the most relatable part, really.
It's like none of it makes him happy because he can't feel good about himself. And you can put that on his parents and say that his upbringing doesn't really allow him to feel good about himself because he was never given that kind of emotional support. And so he
he's never really,
he looks
never really
for
been
it
given
in Kelsey for a while. Like,
yeah,
he's never been given unconditional love ever.
no.
I really like Kelsey because one thing is she's not introduced. She's introduced before Herb dies, but she's introduced around the time that Herb's no longer a part of BoJack's life, and in some ways, I think he sort of sees her as a way to right what he did wrong with Herb, and he ends up making a similar, not a similar sort of mistake because he sort of didn't contact her after she got fired on his behalf. It wasn't really a backstab. It was more just neglecting someone who he should really consider a friend.
Yeah. And of course, Kelsey learns a bit from BoJack in the season, like in that one episode where with Becca the chicken. I love that episode, by the way, especially the first proper introduction of Meow Meow Fuzzy Face.
Yes.
I love Meow Meow Fuzzy Face.
Book Beck, you remembered.
Fine, you can also book Beck.
Book Beck.
Don't forget that whole thing where the police have that entire thing about whether or not he's a loose cannon.
I'm a cannon, certainly, but loose.
He's a card that plays by his own rules. That is the definition of a loose cannon. All right.
One of my favourite Meow Meow Fuzzy Face moments was in that episode where he arrests Princess Carolyn and what's the guy she was going out with for a while? Ralph, that's it. And there's the Harvey Firestein thing, and he hears the voice and he gets spooked. There's no way you can mistake that for a person. Who else is back there?
I'll need a by-the-book rookie, a curmudgeonly veteran 2 days from retirement.
Yes, it is a big pen.
Who's your favourite Baroque composer? Bach? Not Vivaldi? You're insane. I love BoJack's pun work.
Yeah. But I think that was the first season where we really saw the alliteration come into play a lot.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's the next season, isn't it? With Courtney Portnoy and the...
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about Princess Carolyn this season.
Yeah.
Well, she's had a whole thing with, obviously Vincent Adultman, and there's the theory that she kind of...
I'm glad that didn't outstay its welcome.
Well, the thing is, there's a few theories out there that she subconsciously kind of knows, but she's wanting to just deny it, lie to herself a little bit, just to have at least some degree of happiness.
Yeah, I mean, that storyline didn't outstay its welcome. It was there for as long as we wanted it, and no longer.
That's the thing with BoJack. The jokes last as long as they need to.
Yeah.
And the gags really only last as long as they need to. I mean, hell, the joke that Mr. Peanut Butter, he's an idiot, look how stupid he is, doesn't even last that long.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we find out there's more than meets the eye.
You get to see more of him and see him as an actual character.
Yeah. Is the Princess Carolyn? I love that throughout this season she, pardon the pun, she goes through a lot, but she does land on her feet.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Rutabaga, who is introduced this season.
Oh God, him.
Yeah, that character was alright.
Don't trust that rabbit.
Rutabaga Rabinowitz, who forged Princess Caroline's signature to start a company, although that ended up working out well for her.
Yeah, I like how that really backfired on him.
Yeah. But yeah, Princess Caroline is underappreciated in her workplace. Like,
well, to be fair, keep in mind that she was working for a company that hired Vanessa Gecko and also gave her the worst assistant ever,
yeah,
and then promoted him.
out of nepotism, and I don't know if that's a commentary on how much in Hollywood is nepotism, because I'm pretty sure like there are a lot of stories you could tell of, well, people getting by because of who they know rather than what. And
oh yeah, and even if it's not conscious, that's always going to be a factor to some extent.
And Princess Caroline, it could also be identified as institutional sexism, but because Princess Caroline is, well, both female and
honestly,
in her 40s, like, I think she's kind of passed over a lot.
Don't forget BoJack. We're not going to talk about BoJack's former manager, like the guy who was the guy before him. He's the perfect example of institutionalized sexism.
He was quite.
He would make. I mean, I know it's probably not part of this season, but keep in mind, at one point he keeps sending Princess Caroline out to buy erotic negligees so he can give them to random women he's looked at in the street. And obviously they never seem to accept his gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else happened in this season? I feel like Todd wasn't really fleshed out until season 3.
Look, Todd had a few. I think this was the start of Todd's escapades into doing things and also things just working out for him. I mean, keep in mind, there was that whole thing where he suddenly thought he was cool and everything was working out for him. And no, those bikers didn't murder him because he was too cool.
And then BoJack criticizes him once.
Oops, did I do that?
The Toad, man. Toad Chevet.
Why are you dressed like that? It looks weird.
Yeah, BoJack criticizes him once and then he's back to being regular old Todd. BoJack is...
what did you think of Diane in this season?
Yeah. One of the things I was going to touch on earlier about when she goes to stay with BoJack is, like, she wants to do great work and make a difference. She doesn't feel like she's doing that, so she goes to Cordovia, can't hack it, and then comes back. But instead of going back home, she goes back to BoJack because I don't think she can face Mr. Peanut Butter.
Mr. Peanut Butter.
Face Mr. Peanut Butter, even though I'm pretty sure she knows deep down he wouldn't give a crap if she came back.
And that's vindicated later on when...
I think subconsciously she just didn't. I think subconsciously she just doesn't want. She doesn't feel like she, should be vulnerable.
I don't think she feels like she deserves the instantaneous forgiveness that she knows Mr. Peanut Butter would give her.
Yeah, there's definitely the self-loathing sort of.
And when she stays with BoJack, we see that they are alike in all of the worst ways.
Exactly, which is why they wouldn't work out.
It's like if I can borrow a quote from Rick and Morty when someone describes Rick and Unity's relationship, you're like legging...
Is that the one where the guy turns himself into a pickle?
No, it's the...
I know.
It's the show, but not the episode. But she says of Rick and Unity, you two are like leggings and mid-calf boots. You think you're great together, but all you're doing is bringing out the worst in each other.
Yes. And they do bring out the worst in each other in some ways.
Well, they do.
Not in all ways. That's
the sad part. The thing that they both connect on is kind of the worst part of them in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, they both have similar depression and self-loathing issues, and they feed into each other's problems like that.
Well, they enable each other.
Yeah. And well, when BoJack gets back from New Mexico after 2 months of disappearing without notice, the first person he sees is Diane, and he's like, "Are you still here?"
Yep, still here.
I thought when she bought that wine, that was her way of saying thank you as a thank you gift, but then she just drank the wine.
I like that.
Nicole, come on.
Very good quotes.
Oh.
Well, keep in mind the BoJack. The thing is that they're too similar in some ways, and that's the problem that I think a lot of people will tell you in a lot of relationships, not just like this, but in a lot of them, if the people are too, sometimes the whole opposites attract thing is because the people are so different. It's
like,
fresh.
I think
It's fresh on me.
That's the thing.
People need a break from themselves now and then.
Yes.
Well, it's fresh on themselves. I mean, I know this isn't the right podcast to talk about it, but at one point, Bret Hart, the wrestler, mentioned that the reason a lot of tag teams and all that fell apart was because they were too similar as people. They worked together well as people, but the problem was they were around each other all the time. And because they were like that, not one of them is speaking. Not one tag team that he remembers is even talking to each other anymore, or they died without actually fixing the relationship with the other because they were too similar, and they couldn't stand. In the end, they couldn't stand to even be around each other.
There's being too similar, but with BoJack and Diane, there's also being too similar in almost exclusively the worst ways.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They're not exactly similar. I mean, they both did come from broken family relationships. With BoJack's, it was more he was a single child in a relationship where his parents absolutely fucking despised each other. Whereas Diane was from a broken family where she was
more neglected than
she was neglected as well. They were both neglected, but BoJack was the one child that was neglected by both parents who despised each other, and he suffered for it. Whereas Diane's entire problem with her family is that she's one of four children, one that's adopted, and she's treated like worse than any one of them solely because of her gender. Yeah. In some cases,
because of her gender and the fact that she wanted an education. I think, like, her mother especially
is made clear that her siblings want nothing out of life except to watch the same football game that's been going on.
Like that running joke.
Yeah, they've been watching the same football game that's been going on since the 1980s.
It's not
even though they know the
watching
results.
Football; it's watching a specific football game.
That they know the results too.
How many times does
complaining about immigrants, complaining about immigrants? Yeah, the fact that they complain about immigrants, even though, as Diane points out, they are immigrants technically.
Well, not even technically, they just are.
They are.
Yeah, they're literally immigrants. Like, I always like that one. Like, what's the point? All the jobs are going to immigrants. We're immigrants. How do you
We're Vietnamese.
We're Vietnamese.
Step off.
We're American as fuck. Oh, and let's not get her mother.
That doesn't count as the F-bomb of the season, does it?
Yeah. No.
It's not really fully an F-bomb,
he says,
is it?
Fur.
Oh, mother. Diane's mother. Diane's mother is not as bad in some ways as BoJack's mom.
And she's very much like, oh, Queen Dee races us with her presence. Yeah,
it's basically a whole, oh, look at you thinking you're better than you're trying to better yourself in any way somehow makes you
when BoJack tried to help the situation by, saying, oh, she's not superior at all.
Yeah.
Well, telling her that she shouldn't have to worry about how these people what these people think.
Diane's mother never forgave her for wanting more out of life than she was getting, I think.
Which, again, is very relatable.
Yeah. How fucked up their lives are. None of them know how to do the most basic of things. They literally called her over to arrange a funeral because none of them could be bothered to call up the funeral home.
And they didn't
even bother to turn up. The disregard that they treat her with.
Then they took they did, which she paid for, and then decided, nah, we're gonna just do this. And when she tried to explain to them why that is a stupid fucking idea and how despicable that behavior is, they treat it as, oh, what would you know about what Dad would want?
Yeah,
it's not about what he'd want done with his remains at this point. Now he's fucking dead, And since he didn't leave any wishes, the natural assumption is to do a funeral that you asked her to do. You don't get to change your mind halfway through because you want to turn your dad's body into chum just to throw at Derek Jeter's face.
No, his fat, stupid face.
And then when Derek Jeter is helping that old lady across the street.
Cole.
Is that a barrel of chum?
It didn't even hit him in the face. He didn't even get what he wanted.
It hit the old lady, and then Derek Jeter stole her purse. Oh.
But it's very specific. It's like me dying, and then me having other children, and then them telling Nicole, "Oh no, Dad wouldn't want that. Dad would want his body turned into goop, and then dunked all over Roman Reigns' head."
Probably would.
No, that's ridiculous. I want my body turned to chum, and then my body parts thrown at the still living face of Vince McMahon. But I want to turn into like that whole into something like flubber, so it sticks to his face and he asphyxiates. And he said, "No, no."
Everything all right there, Sam?
She's deciding to throw her screaming fit for the day.
Right.
So she's trying to stand on top of the sofa, throw her head back and squeal. And I've just told her no, and she's doing the whole, I don't like to be told no and told I can't do something bad.
Yeah.
So she's protesting and challenging me. So I'm outside at some point and challenge her to a duel where we will flick air at each other and pretend we're throwing kamehamehas or something. Hopefully she'll learn something from it. No, now she's trying to throw a blanket over herself. Okay. You do you. You do you, child. You've got to remember, she is a toddler.
Yeah.
She's in the defiant stage. Now she's laughing, playing peekaboo with herself. She has her own she has her own teepee, by the way, now. Off topic.
Yeah.
She has a teepee which we've stuffed with all of her stuffed toys, so she just jumps in there sometimes to, lie down. I keep calling her Big Chief pull her back
Big
away.
Chief pull her back away.
What else did you like from season 2 of BoJack?
Oh my god. The Daniel Radcliffe cameo. Well, it's not a cameo, it's a guest role. Oh, Paul McCartney had a cameo that was good.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about the Daniel Radcliffe one is that he was a fan of the show before they asked him to do it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that the later seasons are going to get interesting, and I will say that if I have to say the one strength of season 2 was amazing with character work.
Oh yes.
Whether or not you think the character was good or bad, in terms of their personality and the actions they did,
everything made sense.
Exactly.
Everything makes sense, and everything is everything holds a point to the story.
Yeah, I mean, tell me, friend, could you ask for anything more?
Yeah.
Hold on, there's a moth in my tent. What do you want?
Brilliant.
That's one of the silly, the most basic but funny puns they do in the is that they do the entire animal thing.
The elephants in the room.
Well.
Oh yes, of course.
Oh, Corduroy Jackson, we haven't mentioned.
Love you.
Yeah. Oh, I like how he comes back in season 6.
He's not who I would have expected to. Although when we get to that episode, I'll explain why it makes sense. Well, you know why it makes sense. You saw the episode.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I wouldn't have expected that, but I'm glad it happened, and that's all I'll say for now.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's nice to see Joel and Bradley Hitler Smith in the funeral episode. Like we never.
Yeah, we don't see enough of him in the show in general, really.
Well, we see about as much as we can without it being gratuitous, I think. Well, not gratuitous, without detracting from the pacing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I've lost my train of thought, but
it's all right. Yeah. I didn't know you had one to begin with.
Yeah. Joelle is affecting a British accent, which she didn't have before, and BoJack's like, I'm 90% sure you used to be American.
I like how in the flashback she was American.
Yeah.
So wait, and but then BoJack acknowledges the flashback and goes, "So in the flashback."
Yeah.
I like how he's always the one who thinks of things that no one else does.
Yeah. It's like BoJack is the one that notices things and no one pays attention.
He's the straight man of the show.
Yeah. Although he can also have his funny moments.
Yeah, he can be as loony as everyone else, but you know.
He generally he's the one that points out the absurdities.
Yeah.
Well, again, the easiest.
And I like how even Diane says, you know, I'm sure if you were here, you'd say that's not politics. None of this is politics. You know, in season 4 when he goes away.
I do also like that after the whole Herb thing, he has that entire orphanage build.
Oh yeah.
Thing.
Oh yeah,
Herb loved orphans, usually as a
delivery apparatus for hackneyed jokes.
Yeah, but then they've spelt it wrong.
The gerb
Kazan. But then
he shouldn't say gerb. I'm gonna go with
then
gerb.
Todd even tells him, you know, I think that Herb would have actually found this funny.
Was that hedgehog voiced by Ricky Gervais? Because that's who it reminds me of.
Yes. Yes, yeah. It was.
But that's even Todd gets Herb in some way, even though he's never actually met him.
Yeah, and I like how he's just a lot.
And he's right. He's right though. Herb would probably find this entire thing hilarious that BoJack couldn't even get this right.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And Sarah Lynn goes around touching people's faces and saying, "You're next."
Although I like the foreshadowing where they talk about whose funeral it's going to be next.
Yeah. And they look at BoJack. Well, you are the oldest.
Well, spoiler alert, it's ain't BoJack.
Yeah. And we will get to that in the next episode. But
I like he sounded slightly annoyed with me.
No, I wasn't slightly annoyed. I just didn't really know how to...
You were very annoyed.
Well, I will say about that's coming, I really think that is the tragedy of BoJack Horseman.
Yes. Oh, and it's doubled down on in season 6 as well, which... Yeah. Well, triple down on, quadruple down on.
Well,
I don't know.
We'll get to that when we get to it, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at 53 minutes, so final thoughts? What does everybody...
Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said before, is that season 2 felt like, the real beginning of BoJack.
It was a show growing up, wasn't it?
Well, again, I treat season 1 like it's a prologue. Like, this is more what you need to watch to get the rest of it, obviously, but... Yes. It does the necessary, right, here's who this is. Here are some events that might be important later. That now the show can truly begin, but also it does so much with the character work. And we get to see so much of BoJack through his relationship with Wanda and the destruction of his relationship with Charlotte. We get to see just parts of how broken BoJack really are.
And we get to know the kind of person he is.
But also we get to see how frustrated he is with the Secretariat thing, because ultimately Secretariat is his dream.
Yeah.
And it makes it worse when you find out that the movie is a success, even though they removed him. He's not even in the movie in the end. That's the ultimate part.
Exactly.
They did all that stuff at the beginning to computer impose him just in case he died or something happened, and then something happened, so they replaced him completely. And the worst part was that the computerized BoJack was better than the original.
I like the breadcrumbs that this show leaves.
Oh God! Well, again, this is what I still consider BoJack season 2 the actual beginning.
Yeah.
For those reasons, is that
very much.
I always go into it seeing it as this is where BoJack really starts. This is chapter 1. The first season is chapter 0 to me.
That's a good way of looking at it, because you're not wrong.
Well, no, I mean, seriously, go back and try and watch it with that mindset, and you'll understand it even more. But it's just the way not the only way I can watch it, but it's my preferred way to watch it. That season 1 sets me.
Season 2 gives us the defining moment to see how petty BoJack is, and it's in the Hollywood Stars and Celebrities episode.
I mean,
Oh yes, where he just has all the money burnt.
It completely supersedes. Also, we mustn't forget, Margot Martindale does appear in this season in the best scene ever, where she gets mad because they don't remember, her name. All the names of other character actresses. So she starts shooting the fuck out of people. All the while, Princess Carolyn is looking at a photo of a painting and really engrossed and really sticking herself in the painting. Meanwhile, in the background, they bring that panda. Oh god, they bring that panda with them, don't they? That they keep telling
Alan
die.
Jokes about he's gonna die.
Alan. That they keep telling him he's gonna die, and he's just like, "Why do I have to die? Why is it just me?" And they keep saying, "Now one of us is going to die in this mission," and they just keep looking back at him.
But
he's all gonna survive.
Not only that, Ollie, he's not even part of the thing. He's just a guy coming around to fix the cable. He's not even involved.
Heard too much. You're involved in this now. Oh no, Alan's dead. Nope, the bullet hit my cell phone.
No,
oh no,
Alan's cell phone is dead.
So something died, but then it turns out it's going to be a father. So he runs off, and they just let him walk off. Meanwhile, Margot Martindale starts shooting at cops with heavy weaponry.
Oh yeah, you all love my performances, but not enough to look at the credits and find out what my name is.
Yeah.
The blood I spill today is for all who live in lucrative obscurity. Great stuff.
Yeah, I like how her story ends. I mean, it's probably not one to talk about it, but I think her character's quite a funny ending.
Yeah. Right, well, we're nearing the hour mark. Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood! I just love how angry he is.
Yeah. Oh, but he burned so much money that was going to go to charity.
It's a stripper name.
Just to get back at Daniel Radcliffe for forgetting who he is.
Honestly, BoJack is very petty.
Oh, also, what do you think of the whole mulch joke?
Oh, right, yeah. Can I tell you a joke? Is it a really long joke with no punchline?
I like how that's referenced. But that is pretty much the humour style of BoJack. You know, there's stuff that everything has a payoff of interest.
Yeah, nothing. There is no abandoned thread, and like.
I mean, even minor characters come back later. Yeah. You know, it's like we were talking about Corduroy Jackson earlier, and Pete Repeat, who's in this season.
Yep. Oh. Even if it looks like a thread.
You do realise that anyone listening to this anyone who's listening to this hasn't seen season 6 will be very confused as to why you had such a tone of dread when we were talking about Pete Repeat.
Oh god. Yeah. Oh.
They're not gonna know. When he turns up and says, "I'm Pete," I was like, "Oh, I know who that is." I was like, "Yeah," and then I was like, "Oh God, no."
Oh.
Because I was, yeah, exactly. So at first I was excited, and then I was like, "Oh no, I know what this means."
Yeah. Oh.
Because you just think of him as that funny character who has a gimmick.
I never feel like we've said enough, even though we've been going for an hour.
Well, it's one of those shows you can endlessly talk about.
That's the problem. That's
so
the problem
much
with
to talk about.
Well, that's the problem with BoJack. There's so many opinions, so many ways you can look at the show. There is so much going on in just a season, an episode of the show in some way. That there is no way to really. There isn't a definitive way to explain it all.
Yeah.
I think we could have just as easily have done this show episode by episode, and each episode would still be as long as like a season discussion is, if that makes sense.
But
that's not a serious suggestion.
no,
by the way,
I would like to finish something that I start.
Yes. Yes. No, that wasn't a serious suggestion, Ollie. That was just a statement of fact.
Although we could, I agree. And we've just hit the hour mark, so I think we'd better leave it there. It's also getting kind of late.
Yeah, because we could talk about this all day and all night. Oh, by the way, I want Sam's reaction to this video. I've just put in the comments.
Hold on, let's have a look.
You'll have to turn up the volume to hear it.
Yeah, let's have a look. I'm just opening it up in my app.
Oh, I just heard an ass sound. I was wondering what you were going to say there.
Do we want his reaction on the stream, or?
If you want to hear Sam laughing, then I guess. But yeah. Oh, what a show! What a show! It's just the best.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, season 2 had my favourite episode for a long time, which was the game show episode, and
I can see why it would be that. Was it your favourite episode until Free Churro, or was it superseded before?
It was my favourite episode until Free Churro, which is my current favourite episode.
Yeah,
it was no. My favourite episode for different reasons is The View from Halfway Down.
Oh yeah, that is a masterpiece. That whole episode. Am I wrong?
No, not at all.
Good, because I know I'm not. I know I'm absolutely right.
And I love in this show in particular how nothing is ever abandoned and everything, like you said, everything has a payoff.
Everything
even
comes
if
back
it seems like it has been put to bed, it can still come back.
And I think that the spaghetti strainers is a really good sort of metaphor for the writing style of this show. You know, how like something's set up early on that's considered inconsequential or random, and then later on, it's important.
We also talk about the fact that poor meerkat.
Oh, I know! And how he's always being dragged away, and how he can never spend time with his son, and how he's... I like how when, they accidentally smash the sort of house that he built, it's Sarah Lynn who says something like, you should have used, some sort of building method to do that, because she wanted to be an architect.
Yeah. Oh.
I want to be an architect.
Oh. We'll get to Sarah Lynn next week.
oh boy, will we?
Oh boy!
I've actually been thinking about that episode and what I'm going to say a lot lately.
It's haunting, isn't it? It's... I mean, I think that the hardest hitting episode for a very long time was that second to last episode of season 2. Funnily enough, I think the last episode of season 2 was probably the flattest of all the finales.
It was also one of the most uplifting.
It just felt the least consequential. Yeah, it was the most uplifting, but it was also the least... Well, no, it wasn't, because I think the most uplifting was season 4's ending.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it was... Yeah, it was the most inconsequential ending of the season overall. That's not to say it wasn't good. It was just... Considering how hard hitting the previous
BoJack
episode was, it felt a bit flat. Yeah, which was nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Which was nice.
Yeah. Right, anyway, we've gone over time, so we'll leave it there. We'll come back next week for season 3. We're allowed to... Well, obviously we're allowed to do anything. It's not really a... it's a conversation, not an assignment. But...
Will the Facebook police get us?
Well, if you want to, refer back to previous seasons in episodes, obviously do that if you think of something that you forgot to say.
Yeah, well, we kind of straddle the line between different seasons anyway, don't we?
Well, it's because everything connects so well. You can't really...
Exactly. It's hard to discuss a season of BoJack without either bringing up a later season or an earlier season.
Everything connects in some way in the BoJack verse.
Everything that happens for a reason.
Yeah, which is almost ironic because it's BoJack Horseman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us, anyone who did. We'll see you soon.
More than one. Yeah, see you soon,
Bye.
guys. Bye.